educators across the country are filing lawsuits alleging they were unlawfully fired for their comments about Charlie Kirk's assassination. In the complaints obtained by ABC News, plaintiffs claim their First Amendment rights were violated because the comments were made on personal social media accounts. One teacher in Iowa says she was fired for comparing Kirk to a Nazi. The district confirmed the firing, saying the situation was, quote, handled in accordance with applicable federal and state law and board policy. The president of the American Federation of Teachers condemned the firing, saying, quote, no one should celebrate another person's murder, but using this tragedy to encourage doxing, censorship, and firing of people for their opinions, including educators' private opinions shared during their personal time, is wrong. Let's bring in ABC News legal contributor and Hofstra Law professor James Sample and Avery Harper for more. James, how do you expect these legal battles to play out, and what do you think judges need to consider here?
Diane, the First Amendment protects your right to free speech from the government. It does not protect your right to free speech from your boss, which is to say, if you work for a private company, an individual who works for a private company, a private employer, can usually discipline or fire that individual for anything that individual says, including outside of work, including even online. An individual who works for the government, like a public school or a university, does have some more speech protections, but even then, not everything is protected. These cases, particularly involving the individuals who are suing private employers, are unlikely to go anywhere. Those involving the individuals who are suing on behalf of or against suing the government because they were fired from a public employment context, they have a better chance. But even there, it is not absolute, and public employees can be disciplined if their speech disrupts the workplace or goes against established policies, especially during work hours or on work platforms.
What exactly is protected by the First Amendment, and how can where you work affect how it protects you?
The First Amendment protects individuals against the government infringing on their speech right. The First Amendment does not protect against private employers or private individuals who might infringe on speech rights. There are no First Amendment rights against private individuals. But in the instances where the First Amendment is protective, i.e. in context where an individual is working for the government, the First Amendment right is very protective. But that First Amendment right gets balanced against other interests. There's a case called called Pickering v. Board of Education that produces a balancing test known as the Pickering balancing test. And that test, it's easy to articulate. It's very hard to apply in practice. That test basically balances, on the one hand, the government's interest in efficiency, in workplace harmony, satisfactory performance of the employee's duties, against the employee's First Amendment rights. There are contexts in which an employee has greater First Amendment rights based on context, based on numerous factors specific to the facts involved. So you can imagine a political science professor, for example, has more leeway if they discuss on a regular basis the feelings and thoughts about political leaders or political movements than, say, a professor of engineering at a university would, where they're making a one-off comment that is not necessarily germane to the material that they would normally cover.
Is there a distinction between hate speech and something people might find offensive?
There is no distinction, Diane, between hate speech and free speech. That is a comment that last week, about 9 days ago now, Attorney General Bondi made, that she said that there is hate speech and there is free speech, and we're going to go after those who are engaged in hate speech. The reality is that it is a bedrock principle of American constitutional law that even the idea of speech that we as a society or that the government abhors is protected by the First Amendment.
All right, James Sample, thank you.